And I think that may be one of the other things is, what can I learn? Can somebody bring something to the table that I can learn? I've got my controller right now just graduated from college last year. And yet my degree's in accountancy, which is kind of weird, but I was on that 27-year plan. I'm a slow learner. And so I can talk a little bit of the finance with her, but I learn new things from her all the time.
Welcome to the AttractionPros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman, founder of BackLooper. I help attractions collect guest feedback and identify top priorities needed for improvement.
And I'm Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting. I help leaders lead so they can increase employee engagement and retention.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the AttractionPros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Matt, I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Say, I have a question for you.
All right.
Have you ever started let's say a lawnmower with a pull cord?
Matt, I'm going to say something really embarrassing, and that's I've never operated a lawnmower in my life. I live on the third floor. I'm in a condo. We have a landscaping company. The HOA outsources for that.
Well, I figured that was the case there in Chicago, but I didn't know if any other places in your life.
No, nowhere else either.
Okay. Well, and the reason I bring that up is because today's guest, it's kind of like pulling that ripcord and just letting it go. Right. Jim Kunau from Island H2o down in Orlando. We didn't have to do much in this interview. This was just kind of fast paced. Just ask him a question and let him go. And it was fascinating. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was such a cool conversation. And yeah, I mean, it just shot out of the gate. So yeah, now I'm imagining the metaphor and now I can start to put the pieces together of how that can work. So Jim is the general manager at Island H2o Live, which you can find at islandh2olive.com. as he'll point out towards the end, that Island H2o Live looks like it spells out olive when you write it all in as one word. And he has an amazing experience within the attractions industry, the theme park, water park industry, along with several other very interesting job titles that he's held, and his philosophy on leadership, on guest experience, on the intricacies of how they navigated COVID. They were one of the first places to reopen. They opened, before all the large parks around them opened, and were really, I would say, one of the examples of how to operate safely in this new normal. And we're going to get to talk about all of that and a lot of things that Jim's passionate about.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool, you mentioned some of the experience these got within the industry, but it's also that external experience. And you know how when you interact with someone, you're really interacting with all of their experiences to that point. Mm-hmm. I think Jim is one of those guys who really personifies it, and he pulls from so many different experiences to run the park the way he does. It's fascinating. So it's great to talk to him all the time. But I'm really looking forward to this one as well.
Yeah, and it's also cool to hear about how Island H2o is one of, if not the most technologically advanced water parks in the world. And we'll get a chance to talk about that too. So enough of us. Let's get straight to this awesome conversation with Jim Kunau.
Let's pull the ripcord. Really appreciate, Jim, you being here to do this. And you got the questions. Right.
I did. I kind of walked my way through them. My wife looked at the first question and said, Jim, that'll take you 25 minutes. Don't tell them everything.
That's the goal. So it's just a quick overview.
Yeah.
Well, remember that I'm old. And there were 2 points in my life where I had multiple jobs. So I took my first job was working for my dad. And at 9, I needed a new baseball glove. And he said, do you have any money? I said, no. He said, good, you're going to work. And so I started helping his bookkeeper. Well, come to find out, I was his bookkeeper's check and balance, and I was more accurate than his bookkeeper on adding up numbers. This was before spreadsheets. And so I got my Cesar Geronimo baseball glove that, by the way, I kept all the way through college.
Wow.
But it took me a year to earn enough money to buy it. So, but then he put me on the road selling windshields. I ran a direct mail program for him at 13. When I dropped out of college, I opened my own business with my brother selling windshields and then closed it. When I moved to New Orleans, I didn't realize how much money it really took me to go to college. And I was broke. So I bounced at a bar and ultimately became the assistant general manager for the bar and restaurant. I taught at a daycare center, 3 and 4 year olds for 18 months. And then I drove a delivery truck that ultimately 5 years later, I took over running that business after I sold EKG equipment for 4 years.
Wow. That was the neonatal equipment.
And then I got into neonatal intensive care equipment.
Yeah.
And got there was a lot of downsizing in the 90s. I got downsized. They offered me Buffalo, New York. I said no. I'll take the payout, and went back to school full time. I was broke, and my wife and I were struggling. So I took my first job at a theme park running cash control at Kentucky Kingdom. And after that, it was they invited me back to take over the sales department and became AGM, and then Premier bought us, and then we became Six Flags, and then I moved to Houston with Six Flags and took over my first water park there as park director at Splashdown. And then they said, well, do you want a career? You're going back into marketing. And I did the marketing thing. I became corporate director of entertainment marketing for Six Flags. And my wife said, I'm not moving to New York City. So I quit and I moved to Dubai. Well, the worst part was she didn't move with me. I got divorced when I got back. I loved Dubai and I'd moved back there in a heartbeat. It was a kick in the pants and what wonderful people. It really was terrific. And I moved out of the theme park industry and went into I went to work for MR Malls Group. I helped open the world's largest mall and then a second mall, the Marina Mall there in Dubai. And I had responsibility in 8 locations around the MENA Gold Coast area. So it was way cool.
What was that, like early 2000s?
I'd still be over there, I expect. They came back to the States and did a couple of marketing jobs at Hot Springs and in Birmingham with Magic Springs and Crystal Falls, and then over at Alabama Adventure, which is where I met Matt. Josh, we met while I was in Kentucky, and Kentucky Kingdom. So yeah, that's I've known you guys for years, and then I got my own park that I was the GM after we finished construction. I took over operating the park for 6 years in Corpus Christi at Hurricane Alley. Went to work for Schlitterbahn to help them through the foreclosure process at the property there in Corpus Christi. Moved over to the resort side of the world at Port Royal, and that was before this job became open here. So yeah, I've kind of been everywhere. When my employees look at me, they'll go, "What haven't you done?" Yeah, there's a lot of things I haven't done. I've never been a lawyer or a cop, and it's probably better for the world that way.
Wow, where do we go from there?
Right, exactly.
Well, me, it's probably retirement, Josh.
But not before we finish this episode.
Right.
You won't retire.
I'm not going anywhere. It's I'm about to get in a lot of trouble here. My wife will watch this, but she put us on a diet a couple of months ago, and then at one point looked at me and said, "We're on the diet because of you." It's like, okay, but I'm on I crossed the 20-pound barrier. And that only means that I have 20 more to go. And
congratulations.
But yeah, hopefully I'll do that, live to be 90. I'm not sure I want to get much past that. As long as I can be ornery and still be mobile, I'm good.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
Now you're talking, that's a one-legged guy talking about mobility. That's a little bit of an oxymoron, isn't it?
But you do it well. You do it well. You stay mobile very well.
You know, I got to tell you, I got my most recent leg, and I have not been able to slide slides. because the bottom of my foot is rubber. You can't wear a shoe on slides. You can't wear a rubber foot on slides. And if you take the rubber off, I've got a blade like the Blade Runner under there, not nearly as fancy. But so I've been unable to slide the slides at this park except for the big family raft ride. And so I went to my seamstress and said, "Here's what I want to do," and she's developed a bag for me. And it does have a couple of problems that we got a little re-engineering to do. So I went down my first slide tower about a month ago, and when I hit the water, all the air stayed inside the bag, and my leg goes up, and my weight drags down, and I'm hopping along to try to keep my leg up to get to the end. So I just got to poke a couple of holes in it. My leg is fully submersible. I can be a lifeguard. I've got to work on how I'm going to slide slides.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, if you ever get video of that, we want to see it.
Yeah, no, I judiciously avoid things. I just show up at the park in a swimsuit and tell the guys I'm going down the slide for a minute before anybody has a chance to do anything.
Yeah.
But then again, at my park, that's kind of a problem because there's rides where that we capture video on.
Oh, right.
So, one of the things that this park is known for is we are the most technologically advanced water park in the world. Now, you got to remember my background's marketing, so everybody goes, "Yeah, Jim's pushing out a bunch of hooey," and it's really not the case. From a front of house standpoint, everybody has places to take picture and does a little video nowadays, and all of the big properties. But nobody does it where every ride has some component of technology. So every slide at the park, and we have little signs that whether it's video, whether it's music, whether it's snapshots, whether it's winning the race on the racer, all of those have a component. The wave pool's got a 22 by 44 foot television screen. The Lazy River has a place where you tag up and you get points for loyalty points that you can trade in as you build them up. And that's all front facing for the guests. They can go in and do video recordings. We've got 4 selfie stations scattered throughout the park where they take it, and if they've signed up for the app, it immediately gets sent to their telephone or whatever email address they want. From the front side, that all sounds cool and sounds really technologically advanced, but that's not the only thing. On the back side, there's cool features like instead of having padlocks on doors, we can put in a magnetic lock that triggers with wristbands that employees get issued. On slide towers. So one of the people I trust in the industry told me years ago, second largest number of lawsuits at a water park are due to in-slide collisions. The first being slip and falls, second in-slide collisions. Well, now we've got a redundant system that says the person came out of the slide. And the lifeguard has to acknowledge that, hit the reset button before the next person is allowed to be loaded up top.
Gotcha.
It's simple things like that. So when I say most technologically advanced water park in the world, it's really not hooey, it's a thing. And Vantage has done a great job with this. I will shamelessly plug Whitewater and Vantage. They've been great people to work with.
Yeah, we had Phil Edgell on the podcast about I think close to a year ago, maybe it was really early this year. And yeah, he was using Island H2o as like the kind of the case study for the technology and being able to sort of string together the touch points of the active and passive guest behavior that they collect to be able to deliver all that. Well,
and now I have to say the other component to all of that is what's the point from is anybody going to come to our park because we're the most technologically advanced water park in the world? I am sure that there are 2% of the world that are enough on the technological nerdy side, sort of like me, that would do that. But at the end of the day, the information that we can derive from that is going to help our marketing effort. It's going to tell us what our guests like, what our guests don't like. For ride times, we have ride time monitors throughout the park. We can actually take and run up point values for the loyalty points on the rides that are going slowly to maybe move some people off. Now, in the COVID situation, we haven't really run into that much. But as we come out of COVID and things go back to normal, then if we get overloaded on one slide tower, decrease the points to that one, increase the points to something else, and maybe move a portion of the people. I'm not going to say not everybody's going to move because not everybody really cares.
But you're doing more to kind of manipulate guest behavior in a way that will benefit both operational efficiency and the guest experience at the same time.
And then if you take it even so far as to what purchases are made in our retail store, what purchases are made, what's important to people, that there's a lot of derivative information that we can get. One of the safety features is it's a passive RFID program, so it's not active. I can't tell you, it's not GPS. I can't tell you where little Tommy is every moment.
Right.
But I can tell you the last reader he walked by. So, or we can set up a system. Our lazy river surrounds our children's area. And that's called the island by us. The individual rides have a name, but on the island, we can actually set up a trigger, and we haven't tested this one yet, but it's in this next edition that I'm about to run through, is we can set a trigger that says, little Johnny left the island via this bridge. We've got 3 bridges on and off the island, so that, and we all know that sometimes keeping up with the small kids is a little bit tougher, and if they get off the island, you want to know it, so you at least know what direction to go. You can also do a find my friend in the park, so you can actually chase down exactly where the last place they were.
So how many of those RFID touch points are there? So if you know when someone passes one at one point, but they haven't triggered another one, that you know they're kind of relatively within this radius.
So there's several hundred. And yeah, that's one of those. I don't want to get into all that secret stuff, but there's enough of them where we can get pretty daggone close. Mm-hmm. As long as they've kept the wristband on, we can do that. So my stepdaughter just turned 16. At 15, we could look up and go, okay, that's about where she is. And knowing what she likes to ride, we're generally pretty good about being able to walk directly to her. Now, but the other thing with the 16-year-old doesn't have anything to do at all with technology. When mom gets tired of her, mom puts herself in timeout at the adult pool, and the 16-year-old can't go in because she's not 21. Yeah. That's been kind of fun because she stands at the door going, really? Really? Yeah. Hi. How are you?
So Jim, I want to go back just for a second and ask you about the nerdy part, because you said that not everybody's coming to the park because, you know, of the technological advances. They're coming to have fun, right? So
absolutely. How
do you make all that technology invisible so that they're just having fun? They're on the water slides, they're in the lazy river, but it's just part of the day.
Well, and I have to say, part of it is just straight up not invisible, Matt. That's when you come in, you have to get a wristband because of the safety features on the slides. You got to tag in. Mm-hmm. So is that truly invisible? No. Is it cause any issues? Absolutely not. You tagged into the ride. I mean, so totally invisible isn't going to happen, but invisible's there. You get on the drop slides, which, by the way, because COVID had been shut down for months, we'll open them back up next year as we get through the COVID process. But the minute you tag in, that video is recording, and frankly, the video records all the time. It's only when you do the tag in that says, okay, these next X number of seconds are going to be set to that particular wristband.
That's cool.
And so it's not completely. If you want to get a hamburger and we're tracking, or you want to pay for something with your loyalty points, you got to tag in. So tagging in at the lockers, we use smart cart lockers here that are interfaced to the Vantage system. And so you use your wristband to tag in and open your locker. So while it's not seamless, it is basically laying in the background, and that's what we do. Now, how active you want to be with it is somewhat up to you. Do you register for the app so the pictures come to you? That's up to you. Do you use the video booths? And by the way, if you guys record video all the time, but for most people, if you're in a water park or theme park setting, 7 seconds of video is a long time. What do you do for 7 seconds, especially in the group that you can put 12 to 14 people in, and you're trying to send messages out to your neighborhood? The way I described it when I first got here, and I still think is the case, you're coming to our neighborhood, but you're also bringing your neighborhood with you. And that's part of the coolness of the technology is now our neighborhood's your neighborhood, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does the guest education process for this look like? Because a lot of times when new technology is introduced, there's all these great features and these great benefits to the guest, but then a lot of times guests run into hurdles or, things like, I know a lot of the parks are experiencing issues with like virtual queuing and mobile food and beverage, which just have such great intentions to them, but it's just about literally linking technology that guests might not be used to using with now the benefit that it has to not just the business, but also to the guest itself.
Well, education is a huge part of it, Josh. That's one of those things that I have to say, you can use it or not use it. But all of our front gate line people and our marketing people, guest services, and our retail people are all very good at telling you how to download the app and how to get to those things that you need to. But you have to make the choice. How do people know about the choice? Well, most of the world nowadays actually takes a look at your website before they come. Mm-hmm. So we start talking about it there. When you come in from the parking lot, we've got concrete graphics that talk about selfies and technology and share. And then there are 2 smaller boards. And in all honesty, I should know the dimension off the top of my head. I don't. But over the top of the gate are probably 12 by 9 boards that remind people, download the app, take your selfies, do all those things. So you tell people, then you have your people trained. And I'll be honest with you, that's probably the hardest interface is not everyone that works at a park is technologically savvy. It doesn't require a lot, but it does require training. And that's one that I think as we progress and as we mature as a park, we'll have more mature people, and we're finding better ways of communicating and talking, and that's a learning process. But it's part of that education that we have to do.
So, Jim, you said you kind of as the park matures, as the park progresses, what things have changed since the park opened to now? Because we all know how quickly technology moves. So I'm guessing there's been some changes even in that time period. Well,
I mean, front of the house things, we're into, so how your Apple phone has constant updates, right? But it's we're now at 13.1793, and then we're going to 13.82. But when we go to 14, it's a big change, right? So we kind of the back of the house stuff is very similar to that. There are things that people don't really see much of because at the app level it doesn't change. At the wristband level, which is all at the park, it does. So that's we've had our first big upgrade, and as we get through the off season, there's a second big upgrade coming that should be a bit more seamless, but on the app it will make the app easier to navigate. And so that's the back of the house stuff that we see. It's mostly back of the house items because we found better ways to do it. Or there's a couple of spots where the S just says, well, that's just stupid. And we're going, wow, we thought that was a value. And that happens all the time. But we hopefully improve and develop. And I got to say, Vantage has done a great job of hearing, because when you're the first people to put all of these things into one location, most of these things have been out and available. I mean, locators, good night, nursing homes have been using wristband locators for years, right? So that technology, but how it's used and how it's implemented at the park level is something that it's a lot of the back of the house stuff, things that I want to see, things that make it easier. How light patterns work are not always intuitively obvious between red and green and flashing reds and flashing greens. Those kind of things are the back of the house items that we've changed and improved upon to make them better, and in that particular instance made them safer. So you don't have to know the light pattern at slide tower B is this, or even on slide tower B there are 3 different light patterns because there's 3 different slides. They're now all the same, and the same is true for tower C that has the same set of safety lights. So those are the back of the house things that we've done. And as you're rolling out, you don't think about that, one programmer does tower B and one programmer does tower C. And sometimes they're different, which gets confusing for my employees. And so, and that was early on fixed. We caught that and went, oh yeah, we need to fix that. So, that was, 1.12.
Right. So one of the things, and switching gears a little bit ago, or a little bit here, is a few months ago, you helped us out with a contribution to our Lessons from Executives ebook, which was about really kind of the early days of COVID and sort of, what your outlook is and kind of where we're going from here. And one of the things that you mentioned is that early on, you had this what if conversation with your assistant GM and your director of marketing. And curious, what did that what if conversation look like, and what importance did that take when it very much became a reality?
So, and time frame, I have to tell you, I slept since then, so time frames always get a little off on me. I think in the theme water park world, I looked at my wife the other day and said, "You did that just last week," and she went, 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay. Yeah. So I do have to go, gosh, I have to think real hard. But I will tell you, it was late in the 3rd week of January. This strange virus in China cropped up on a couple of our radars, and we started talking about it. And we said, what happens if the world has a pandemic? I think we've all been expecting something at some point in time since the Cold War, that there would be biological issues. And so we sat down and kind of said, okay, well, that happened the 3rd week of January. The 3rd week of February, we changed management groups here. So we'd moved away from IAM, Innovative Attractions Management, went to Premier Parks. And so in the middle of all that's 3rd week in February. Well, that's when everything started to truly come to light. On March 16th, I closed the park on March 16th, an hour early, and sent all of my employees home and didn't bring them back for park opening until May 23rd. So, but what that initial conversation kind of said was, okay, who does what? And we started doing a little research. Sean Kidd is my director of operations. Sean sits on the WWA government committee. He's worked on the IAPA safety committee. He speaks regularly about safety issues, and he is he's been an auditor with Ellis at Disney. He was an auditor with IAM, and really his background is truly water safety, and he likes those government documents. And I'm an old marketing guy. You give me 2 pages of that and I'm sleeping for 8 hours. And so it's one of those that Sean took on. We split the responsibility into Micah taking care of operations and getting us through the budget process with my assistants, and also assistants from Rapids Water Park Brian and Jack from Rapids helped us out a ton. But that was Micah's responsibility, was the day-to-day operation of how that's going to look. What do we need to do? Mine was getting the biggest challenge in lots of ways is informational. So Sean's section on finding how do we safely operate the park and then get that through to Starguard Elite so that they can approve changes in the process with lifeguards. And then finding out what the Department of Agriculture is going to require, and even when they don't know. And that's sort of where I came in and took on working with ownership to figure out how to navigate that particular terrain, because nobody knew it. I believe, well, for attractions in Osceola County in Florida, we were the first park to submit a document that said, here's how we're going to reopen. And I feel bad for a couple of other attractions here because Sean is detailed, and other people turned their stuff in and didn't have that level of detail that he did and got kicked back. But they went, wow. So we got the administrator to sign off on that pretty quickly. That was actually from the day we got it to him to the day we got it back. There were 2 or 3 things that came back to us that they asked us to change, and in 4 days that was done. Well, then the Department of Agriculture and the governor's office were still trying to figure their stuff out, and we got it in front of the governor and the Department of Agriculture real quickly and said, here's what we want to do. And they went, okay, it's approved at the county level, we'll sign off on this. So we got through it real fast, but we helped establish what that process was. And that was, that was months in the making. And, with the way Governor DeSantis would come in and go, okay, it's Friday, and beginning today, we can open this and that and other. So from the day we actually got approval by the government to open with a process in place, it took us right at 14 days. We got the approval in about 11 days, and then I needed a little bit of time because we've laid off all our staff. We've not done in-services. We've got to get 173 people back in. And oh, by the way, not every one of them wants to come back to work. They're afraid.
Yeah.
So now we got to fill the holes that are created there. We did our lifeguards came back rapidly. Our food service, it took us, really through July 4th, we were still struggling getting enough people in the right places to get all of our locations opened in food service. So, but to answer your question, we split the work up between 3 of us, and then we each had an area that we focused on. Micah and Sean's office are right across the hall from each other. I'm on the other side of the building, which I have to say is all of 20 steps. And we constant conversation. I've read more material on coronavirus 19 than I've ever thought possible. But you have to read also about all the other corona type viruses so that you have an understanding, because the real specifics of 19 aren't all available yet. I read something a day or 2 ago that talked about it's hard to pick up the virus off hard surfaces. It's still primarily an airborne thing, but how far into it are we before that information is released? Mm-hmm. And does that mean I no longer have to wipe down my keyboard twice a day like my policy says I do?
Right.
When Matt started, I had my mask on because my policy is that if you're in the open with the door in the system, you got to have a mask on no matter what building you're in. And as we get into, we're watching the increase in COVID numbers go up right now. And personal belief, and I think there's some substantiation, is that because it's getting colder, people are staying inside more, which gives us more of a chance for exposure. So the greatest part about being a water park is we're an outside attraction. we closed almost every inside opportunity. Our ATM is inside. You have to be escorted to the ATM. We only let 6 people in our retail store. We have a limited capacity in each of the restroom and changing areas. It's one way when you walk into a restroom. You go in one door, you go out another door. So, I mean, it's finding all those processes takes time, and that they changed as we go through. Our concept of social distancing was everybody had their own dot, but that's not how people work. Yeah. People work in groups. And so you've got a group on stairs that take up 3 sets of stairs. Well, you can't put dots because some groups, if it's a single or double, they take up 1 or 2 stairs. If it's 8 people, they take up 3 or 4 stairs. So you've got to change your, it was organic. You got to change the message. And I still think it's fairly organic, though. The basics are we've got to improve our cleaning. And I think we'll see that carry through as we go through next year and years to come, that we'll be cleaning handles, we'll be doing other things. Outdoor environment, UV seems to be a real good eradicator. So, that's the real advantage we have over indoor ride attractions.
Jim, I'm curious, you've been in the business for a long time. Obviously, you've done a lot of different things. And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I know you like to think about the future. So what things have we put into place during COVID? You just mentioned kind of cleaning and that kind of thing, but are there other things that we've put into place that you think are going to carry through and even be with us long after COVID is gone?
That's a tougher one. And I'll be honest, right now, I'm struggling with a couple of things. When we get together as groups, we're pack animals. I'm not going to call us lemmings. I'm not going to say we're all run off the cliff together, but to some degree we do. But amongst people you're around all the time, you have a proximity that you're accustomed to. We all have our personal space, and our personal space is now supposed to be 6 feet. Breakout meetings are a whole lot harder with lifeguards and security or front gate. We have breakouts all over the place where everybody's got to be 6 feet apart. And getting people who are accustomed to each other to maintain that distance is a challenge. And so we now bring it up at every one of our park communication meeting, which is the managers who each have stand-ups in their areas who then say the same things over and over again. My problem is that I'm afraid that people become complacent when they hear it so often, and yet that's a change in life that I think is going to be around for a long time. That from the sanitation, we're going to be wiping handles on tubes down for a long time. I don't know that that's ever going to change how we do it. I was reading an article on doing UV at Universal on big rides, which we all know UV is great. A lot of water parks have UV. We have UV on every bit of our water here. So water goes through UV every 3 hours. And not every water park does that. I know 3 parks ago for me, we only did the children's area with constant UV. But so I think these are the kinds of changes. But at the end of the day, the old marketer in me says we sell fun. If you look at every mission statement that every theme park does and every water park does, it's basically some variation of we want to provide a place for families to generate memories. That hadn't changed.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at it, that's the thing that I think that is ultimately important. People need a break from their current reality. We can't break from the reality of COVID completely because we've got the social distance and we have to sanitize and we've got to protect ourselves and those people around us. But at the same time, we need a place to go let our hair down and give up the basic worries of the world within certain strictures. And I look at it, as many people in our industry do, as a calling. I'm providing people with that opportunity to let go and have a little bit of fun and enjoy their families and hopefully make memories that last a lifetime. You know, Maya Angelou, and I can never quote her directly, so I'm going to tell you straight up, I paraphrase, it is, it's not what you do for people, it's how you make them feel. And we make people feel happy and thrilled and excited and loved. And that to me doesn't change no matter COVID, no COVID. That is our mission. And we work real hard to do that.
Yeah, and I love what you say there about that part not changing, because I absolutely agree. It's kind of those little nuances, right? And those little things that we may have to change to make that possible. I think that's kind of my takeaway there. I wanted to touch on too. You mentioned that we're kind of pack animals and we like to be together and things like that. I've actually noticed some of my friends are more close talkers than I noticed before. You know, they that proximity just isn't there, and I'm like. Okay, dude, you're getting a little close, you know? But I never noticed that before until now when I'm thinking about it more often.
And it's really strange. Now, I'm six. At one point in my life, I was 6'6". I have a completely different perception of what my personal space is than most people do. Because if I stand right next to you, Matt, or Josh, you're a little bit taller, but not a lot, I can't stand as close as you two do together and have you comfortably look at me. So my natural reaction is I'm about, depending on how tall or short you are, I'm about a half a step to a full step further away from you than most people are. And yet I'm a hugger. I got to tell you, this is one of those that really kind of gets me. And you know, I have to say, at my first theme park, there was a mantra of no touching, no touching, no touching that came out as kind of a joke, but we all have to keep that in mind. And in today's world, that's really become a thing. And so you do catch people, and people's comfort level is different everywhere. And that's the other thing about social distancing is, what's 6 feet to you? And because nobody walks around with the tape measure. I've got a 7'3" wingspan. When I spread my arms around, I'll be honest with you, people will think I'm yelling at them if I stand that far away from them. Right. But what I'm trying to learn to do is to give people my 3 feet, and hopefully they give me their 3 feet. And that's kind of hard to train. But you're right. People, you learn a lot more about people. But I also have to say, I'm learning how to read people behind a mask. And I grew up selling stuff. I grew up as a marketer. I look for physical cues all the time. I'm pretty good at it because I was a pretty good salesperson. And when you take a mask and put it across here, and all I've got is from here to here and here down to work with, man, I'm incapacitated.
Yeah. Jim, one of the things we're curious about too is you said you opened May 23rd, right? Was it that
right.
day? Yeah. So that was before Disney, Universal, SeaWorld. Honestly, much of the industry, for those who have reopened, was either, June, July, or, or even later. So I got to imagine there had to have been some feeling of pressure of all eyes kind of on the attractions that are reopening to be able to serve as the example. And curious as far as how you navigated, there were still a lot of unknowns back on May 23rd in terms of being able to safely reopen and be the example for the industry.
So my wife will tell you there's never been a microphone I've ever been afraid of. I'm a middle kid. I'm the, hey, look at me. And yet that's a conversation that not only did we have locally, we had that with Premier Parks. We had it with our ownership group. To my knowledge, outside of a couple of resort parks that opened because resorts were allowed to open, we were the first public theme park to open again, public water park to open again. And going through the how we thought COVID was transferred at that time was a huge thing for us. And so, yeah, we do have, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, given today's world with social media and how fast stuff goes up online that we don't have any control of, was kind of daunting. Because if you're on a slide tower and people are not grouping the way you've asked them to group, what do you do when, you know, Susie Q Public turns on the camera and puts that out on Facebook, and now I've got the Department of Health, I've got the Department of Agriculture, I've got the local task force all coming in to take a look at us. At the same time, what I will tell you is that I think people are basically accepting of people that try hard. And so you get a little bit of slack when you, and I won't tell anybody that we were 100%, and I won't tell you today we're 100%. But what I can tell you is we try, especially in light of what people's own perception of personal space is. And also, it's kind of like when somebody puts their towel down on a lawn chair, and their towel vanishes, and some guest comes back and says, well, you let my towel get stolen. And it was like, we didn't know whose towel it was. We can't stop somebody from that towel because we don't know that. And in lots of things, I have to say, we had to learn. And so we didn't always know whose towel it was, but what we needed to do was to provide an opportunity for it to be a safe towel. And so that's kind of the perception we took. But yes, it did feel like every eye was on us. And I'll be honest with you, it took us till into July before we hit capacity. We ran 50% capacity according to what the Florida standards were. And I didn't have that problem till we made it through the 4th of July without it. I think the next weekend was the first time we brushed up against the number. We didn't make it the next weekend. 2 weekends later, we did. And so there were a total of 6 days where we closed the gate completely. There were a total of 14, including those 6, where I stopped my parking lot and told people can't take any more parking. There's some free parking in the area. They could walk to them. By the time they walked back, my numbers had kind of drifted off. And every theme at water park has that tipping point. More people are going out than coming in. And it tends to be from theme park to theme park somewhere between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So that's all and we make it to 3 o'clock and not have to close the gate. It's kind of how we've thought about it. But, you've got to have the flags that say, we are 150 people away from shutting. We're, 25 people. And it's amazing how fast that number can change on you, both up and down. So that's one. But I think that for the most part, we embraced that we were being watched, and we responded. And when someone had a significant issue, we didn't tell them that it wasn't a legitimate issue, because you get those, but you address them the same way. I think one of the things that I like about the autism training that we did here at this property is that it taught you to deal with individuals as individuals. And that's how I like to take a look at our concerns. Each one of them has brought something to the table that isn't necessarily part of what the concern is, but it impacts the concern. And you need to take a look at when somebody says, you're not doing this right or this well. Okay, what's the point of view? And can we improve upon that? And if we can't improve upon that, do we stop doing it? Period.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of judgment involved on how people react, and then it's important that we give them the opportunity to really share what their concerns are, and then be mindful of, might not be my concern, but it is theirs. And as I'll tell anyone, I like to treat guests in our park as guests in my home. I don't always agree with guests in my home, and I'll tell guests in my home no. But they're always my guest, and I'll do that properly. And so that's one. Does everybody always behave well? No, they don't. But they're always my guest.
Yeah. I like that perspective. I've heard that before, treating people in your park or your facility as if they're guests in your own home. But few people take it to that next level and say, I will tell guests in my home no. Right. And so I think that same attitude is really important with the guests, because they're not always right. They're not always behaving properly. So I don't think we can extend them so much courtesy and so much latitude that they make it worse for other people. And I think that has happened in some cases.
Yeah, I had a boss that went so far as to say there's the saying that the customer is always right. BS. They're not always right, but they're always the guest.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So one of the other things that we want to get into, I know we're starting to run a little low on time here, but you mentioned that you were also an Eagle Scout and you've got a lot of experience there, and curious about some leadership lessons that you learned as an Eagle Scout that maybe transfer over into the attractions industry.
Well, I have to tell you, as an Eagle Scout, there's a lot of tenets in Boy Scouts. My mother created an environment that allowed me to be one of the youngest Eagle Scouts ever. As a matter of fact, I don't believe that you can become an Eagle Scout now until you're at least 15, and it may be 16. I was an Eagle Scout at like 13 years and 7 months. It helps when your mother creates that environment to be able to do it. My father was president before I got into Scouts of our council. So I've been around Scouts my entire life. And so, the Scout motto is a good thing to live by. And those things are easy. Preparation gets rid of lots of stuff. Now, I'm kind of a smart aleck. And I believe that I have a fairly quick wit. Most of the time it's mean, but and I try and keep it to myself. But one of the things that I learned greatly there is be prepared. Sit down and do your homework. For COVID, read everything you can. Listen to your experts. Trust them. Verify your facts. You want to be prepared. And I think preparation probably is what's enabled me to do what I do better. Your skill set may not be the necessary skill set to do the job. So that allows me to go find those people whose skill sets are different than mine. As a matter of fact, I do not want a whole bunch of me's, because I wouldn't like that at all. I don't like me that much. So you find skill sets. I ran into a Scoutmaster that I went to the National Jamboree in Idaho with a combined troop. A Scoutmaster looked at me and said, "You are too young to be an Eagle Scout. I am not putting you in a position of authority." And I went, okay, because that was his problem and not mine. I got away. It kind of hurt. It kind of stung, because I did the work required and I was approved to become. And who the heck was he to say that? Well, I wound up being the cook that day for when Colonel Sanders came and visited a troop for Kentucky, and I got to cook a meal with Colonel Sanders because somebody didn't believe I was ready to be a leader.
That's cool.
And so I also, one of the things that Scouts taught me was not everybody's going to agree with me. I need to learn to build consensus and do things differently. Now, that same Scoutmaster was assistant Scoutmaster when I went to the World Jamboree in Norway. And he actually pulled me to a side and said, Jim, I was wrong. You did deserve to be an Eagle Scout. I just didn't know you and thought it was a thing. And I thought that was pretty big of him. And so I get to go to Norway, and now they've made me a patrol leader, and I've got responsibility. It wasn't nearly as much fun when I was just a guy who did cook and KP, you know?
Yeah. Jim, can you talk a little bit more about finding that team that balances you out? Because you talked about finding the skill sets that maybe you don't have. I think that can be intimidating for some leaders. Can you kind of walk us through how you do that?
And Matt, I'm not exactly sure how I do that. So I'm going to talk for a second.
Sure.
I tend to be loudmouthed, opinionated, and moderately well-educated. So what I look for to balance me out is to go, what am I good at? And I actually sit down and I will do, I've done all kinds of personal profile stuff. I use strength finders a lot. So I've used a couple when I'm an authoritative salesperson. You have to buy from me, right? So I look at those skill sets and I go, okay, what's all that mean? There's not a detail that's not important to me unless it's truly important to me, and then I own it. Well, I want an operations person who pays close attention to those details because that's not my strong suit. And so the first thing to do is to inventory yourself, and then inventory what your position is. And then you have to be real judgmental with yourself and go, I'm not good at this particular portion. I like to think I'm good at a lot of stuff. And I'll tell anybody, I was a pretty good marketer. I am no longer a marketer. I'm an operations guy, but I hired the best marketer that I could find. And Chris Ozimick is absolutely top notch. And I learned something from him every day. And I think that may be one of the other things is, what can I learn? Can somebody bring something to the table that I can learn? I've got my controller right now just graduated from college last year. And yet my degree's in accountancy, which is kind of weird, but I was on that 27-year plan. I'm a slow learner. And so I can talk a little bit of the finance with her, but I learn new things from her all the time. So when you're actually sitting down looking, and if you're not good at inventorying yourself, look for people who you can learn something from. The next thing, and I will say this about people that I work for, and I'll say it for people that work for me. I want to work with people I like. And if I don't like you, I don't want to work for you. I don't want to work with you. And so there's this certain level of, and I can work with anybody, but I enjoy working with the people in the hospitality industry. It's a lot different because almost everybody has a positive attitude, but bring that positive attitude to the table. And yet you still have to have that critical side. So look, do an inventory of yourself, do an inventory of your position, and then inventory what you're looking for. Now, I also, years ago when I went to Dubai, the consulting firm that I went with said, Jim, we may be building a theme park in another part of the world. Go find me the senior staff for that. And I kind of took that a little bit to heart, and I have an inventory of people who I've known for a long time in a variety of places and a variety of products, and actually in a variety of industries, because I think some things are transferable from industry to industry. And so I've got this whole list of things. Now, Sean Kidd, who's my operations director, who I think absolutely the world of, and I met for the first time 7 years ago. He was a lifeguard instructor at the IAM school that, Starguard Elite school that I went to. And there was a lifeguard maneuver that the 53-year-old man couldn't do. And after my fourth attempt diving to the bottom of a 14-foot diving well, I came to the top with Sean. looked at him and said, didn't get it right that time, I'm done. I said, at the end of the day, nose up, stable, and breathing is the goal, and you are. I cannot do that finesse move to save my life. And we both laughed about it, but Sean and I have been friends ever since because he brings something different to the table, and yet he's accepting of what my limitation there was. Did it stop me from proceeding through the rest of the class? No. It just meant that I'm a bull in a china shop, and sometimes I can get the job done, maybe not as well as easily as he can. And so I kept track of Sean for years. And matter of fact, there's 7 people from that particular group that I can tell you exactly where they are. And that's the day that I met them. Mm-hmm. And so as you go through, find those people that stand out to you and hold on to them. My wife gets irritated with me at times because when I post something on Facebook, suddenly there'll be 300 likes and 72 comments. And she goes, none of my stuff ever gets that way. And it's like, yeah, but you live where your friends are. You talk to them. My friends are from around the world, and I don't get a chance. This is my place that I share with them. And so keep track of them. Say happy birthday. Call your buddies and sing happy birthday to them when they don't answer the phone. It's one of those things that I like to do because that keeps me in touch. And that's kind of, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I got a whole bunch of smart friends, and I've got people that are better at things. Sean is better at getting through that governmental stuff, and Micah is better at laying out an operation. And so you find those people and you embrace them, and you keep track, and you say, hey, here's where I am. Want to come play? And because to me, we sell fun. We need to have it. So it's a constant. Yeah, I like to play. I get in trouble for it every now and then, but it's still that's kind of my goal is to make sure that my team's having fun. And when we're not having fun, we're not as efficient as we are when we are when we are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Long-winded, I know.
That's okay. That's okay. Jim, this has been an awesome conversation, and we are running a little low on time. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us if people wanted to contact you or get more information on Island H2o, where would you send them?
Sure. So Island H2o is go to www.islandh2o live. Now I'm going to tell you that's Island H2 Olive. Because the O is the letter, not the number. So, matter of fact, my stepdaughter saw my email address the other day. She went, Olive, what's that? I said, that's O Live, dear. And but then my email is jim.kunau, Kunau, at islandh2olive.com. And so, but I'm also on Facebook. Yeah, I'm on every social platform, but Facebook's about the only one that I understand well enough to play on. I do have to say, if you haven't seen the Island H2o Live TikToks from COVID, you ought to watch them. We have a guy in our sales department. His name is Mick. And Mick did such a wonderful job of being that guy who came to the water park in the pandemic that was closed. And it's hilarious. By the way, he reminds me of the Travelocity gnome without the hat.
Okay.
Awesome.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, thank you for having me on. It's been fun. Like I said, I was worried that we couldn't talk for an hour. Heck, I can do this for forever.
We have more questions on our list. We could just keep going into a part 2, or maybe we'll have to have you back again sometime in the future. But we really appreciate your time today. This was awesome. And to everyone out there, yeah, and for everyone out there listening or watching, just remember, we are all Attraction Pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit AttractionPros.com.